It sounds like the plot of a horror movie you might find on Tubi. But for people of Delaware County, Pennsylvania, this nightmare is real. Just last week, early January 2026, one of the most bizarre, brazen, and frankly disturbing cases of grave robbery in modern American history has been exposed. And this isn't just, some teenagers knocking over some headstones. This is a systematic, industrial-scale operation that involved the theft of over 100 human beings, skeletons, skulls, remains, all snatched from their graves. The suspect in this macabre genre is Jonathan Gerlach, a 34-year-old man from Ephrata, Pennsylvania. Christ is really his middle name. That's wild. To his neighbors, he might have been just another guy living in Pennsylvania, doing Pennsylvania stuff. But to the police who spent months tracking him through the gloom of a historic cemetery, and to the officers who eventually raided his home, he is the curator of a horror movie come to life. We're going to talk about the why and the how, and then we're going to try to answer the question, what the hell is wrong with this guy? This is the story of the Pennsylvania grave robber. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny, and we are back with another spooky and disturbing story today. Before we get to today's story, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Make sure that you like, share, and comment on this video for the algorithm, and hit the hype button. Thank you. Mount Moriah Cemetery is not your average cemetery. It's a sprawling 200-acre cemetery that straddles the border of southwest Pennsylvania and the borough of Yeadon. It was established in 1855, and it's a place of massive historical weight. It's the final resting place of Civil War veterans, captains of industry, and even Betsy Ross, the woman who sewed the first American flag. But Mount Moriah has seen better days. For years, it has suffered from neglect. It's a place where nature has engaged in a slow-motion reclamation project. It's taken it back. Vines choked the ornate Victorian monuments. Trees have burst through the roofs of mausoleums. And it's beautiful in a sad, abandoned, weird way, but it's vulnerable. The cemetery doesn't have a fence, which makes it easy for anyone looking to slip in unnoticed. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why doesn't it have a fence? Well, I'm assuming that most people thought that, what do we need a fence for in a cemetery? People don't rob graves anymore. It's a massive, overgrown labyrinth of the dead, offering perfect cover for illegal activities. And it's huge. The size of Mount Moriah makes it a nightmare to police. It has nearly 200,000 graves. It relies on the Friends of Mount Moriah, which is a dedicated nonprofit group of volunteers who try to keep up the cemetery and preserve the history that's buried there. These volunteers are the ones who first noticed that something was wrong in the fall of 2025. They spotted signs that someone wasn't just visiting the graves. The graves were being opened. The perpetrator was targeting the mausoleums and the underground vaults. He wasn't just digging up dirt graves. These are structures that are built to last for eternity, sealed with heavy stone doors and marble slabs, and breaking into them requires tools, strength, and a staggering amount of audacity. This case stretches back to November 2025. Reports started trickling into the Yeadon Police Department and the Delaware County Criminal Investigation Division about disturbed graves. And I guess you could say disturbed is a mild way to put it, because the perpetrator was cracking open crypts that had been sealed for a century. Detectives Leah Sezenik of the Yeadon Police Department and Chris Carr of the Delaware County CID began piecing together a pattern. The intruder was methodical. He was bringing crowbar. He was bringing ropes to rappel down into the deeper vaults. He was bringing ladders. This was a burglary operation. The treasure just happened to be bones and dead people. Between November 7th, 2025 and January 6th, 2026, the police responded repeatedly to the cemetery. They were dealing with someone who knew the terrain, who worked under the cover of darkness, and who seemed to be getting bolder and escalated. The frequency of break-ins kept going up. It suggested a compulsion. The thief wasn't stopping. And of course, every criminal makes a mistake eventually. And for Jonathan Gerlach, his mistake was, needing an energy drink. Grave robbing is hard. I get it. It's manual labor. Prying open marble slabs and climbing out of crypts burns a ton of calories and you need a lot of energy. And during one of his excursions in November, the suspect left behind a modern piece of trash amidst the century-old ruin. An energy drink can. This was the break that the cops needed. In a scene that was straight out of CSI, forensic technicians were able to lift a DNA profile from the rim of that discarded can. And now, instead of a description of a guy in the dark, they had a biological identity. They had a DNA profile attached to the scene of the crime. So while the DNA was being processed, the detectives went high tech. They deployed surveillance strategies that the inhabitants of Mount Moriah couldn't have dreamed of. Police set up license plate readers around the perimeter of the cemetery. They started looking for vehicles that didn't belong, cars that were showing up repeatedly in the dead of night. A Toyota RAV4 kept pinging the system. It was registered to Jonathan Gerlach. The investigators pulled cellular records. They looked for phones that were active in the area for the cemetery during the times the break-ins were occurring. Gerlach's phone didn't just ping once, it pinged at the cemetery 6 separate times between October 31st and December 24th. Your phones are snitching on you, people. They were closing in. They had his car at the scene, they had his phone at the scene, and they had his DNA on a can inside a looted grave. So it was time to spring the trap. The climax came on the evening of Tuesday, January 6, 2026. The Eden police chief, Henry Gianmarco, wanted to catch the guy red-handed. They wanted to catch him in the act of grave robbing. Detectives set up a surveillance operation inside the cemetery grounds. It was a cold January night. At approximately 8 p.m., the trap snapped shut. The surveillance team spotted the familiar Toyota RAV4 inside the cemetery. The boldness, the brazenness of Gerlach is astonishing. Before detectives even moved in to arrest him, they looked into the back seat of the vehicle, and there, in plain view, were numerous bones and skulls. This gruesome cargo just sitting there like groceries. The detectives watched as Gerlach emerged from the darkness of the cemetery. He was carrying the tools of his operation, a crowbar and a burlap sack. He was walking back to his car, presumably to load up the latest haul, like he just got back from Costco. When investigators stopped him, they opened the burlap sack. Inside, they found fresh loot from the night's work: 3 human skulls, various loose bones, and the mummified remains of 2 children. Yeah, you heard that right. Mummified children in a sack. Gerlach was arrested immediately, and he was faced with the reality of being caught holding a bag of bones. So he admitted to stealing approximately 30 sets of human remains. He was fudging the numbers a little bit, because as police would soon find out, 30 was a bit of an undercount. The search of Gerlach's home was a descent into madness. Jonathan Gerlach lived in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, which is a quiet town in Lancaster County, about 70 miles west of the cemetery. On the night of the arrest, police obtained a search warrant for his residence and a storage unit he rented nearby. The search team included the Delaware County CID, Ephrata Police, and Middle Creek Search and Rescue, who brought in cadaver dogs. They probably didn't need the dogs to find the bodies because the bodies were everywhere. Delaware County District Attorney Tanner Rouse briefed the press and called the scene inside Gerlach's home a horror movie come to life. Gerlach was living with these remains. The house was a grotesque museum of death. The heart of his collection was the basement, where investigators found piles of skeleton remains. But this wasn't just like a bunch of piles like hoarders piling trash in a corner. Skulls were found arranged on shelves, like on a display, like it was a trophy room. The bodies were in various states of decomposition. Some were clean skeletons, bleached over time. Others were hanging, still pieced together. There were mummified hands and feet. There were decomposing torsos. The sheer volume of bodies and body parts was overwhelming. Between the house and the storage unit, authorities recovered over 100 full or partial sets of human remains. The stuff in his house paint the picture of a man who was stripping the dead of everything they had. There were dozens of skulls. There were long bones, femurs, tibias, stacked up like firewood. There was mummified flesh that had been preserved by the cool, dry air of the mausoleums. And Gerlach wasn't just after the bones. He was looting the personal effects buried with the dead. There was jewelry. There was a skeleton with a cardiac pacemaker still attached. And this is the part that baffles everybody. Why? Why would a 34-year-old man spend his nights rappelling into crypts to steal bones? What is the drive? What is the reason? And based on the investigation, the answer seems to be a mix of greed and some bizarre psychological obsession. You might not know this, but there is a thriving market for human remains online. It's called the red market. Collectors, oddity enthusiasts, weirdos, artists, and medical fetishists pay good money for osteological remains. The investigation revealed that Gerlach was an active participant in this underground trade of human remains. Police learned that Gerlach was part of a Facebook group explicitly named the Human Bones and Skull Selling Group. That's right, Facebook. People are buying and selling femurs right next to ads for baby clothes and lawnmowers. Gerlach allegedly operated an Instagram account under the handle Dead Shit Daddy. Ooh. The account featured photos of Gerlach posing with skulls. And the captions weren't subtle. They indicated that the bones were for sale. A quality human skull can sell for hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, depending on the condition. For Gerlach, Mount Moriah was a warehouse where the inventory was free for the taking. This was a job. He was mining the dead for money. But making money doesn't fully explain the house. If he was just a seller, he would be moving that inventory. Get it in, get it out. Right? He wouldn't have 100 sets of human remains cluttering in his basement. He wouldn't have the skulls lined up like precious moments figurines. There's a clear element of compulsive hoarding here. He was accumulating faster than he was selling. And the horror movie display suggests he had some sort of psychological satisfaction from possessing these items. He, for some bizarre reason, wanted to be surrounded by them. To live in a house with decomposing torsos requires a complete break from normal human empathy and disgust responses. Even the smell alone, right? Eden Police Chief Gianmarco noticed that everyone there could not believe what they saw. Gerlach had to have found himself normalized into this environment to a incredible pathological degree. Gerlach clearly viewed these people as things. The term abuse of a corpse is the legal charge, but it's also a description. He stripped them of their humanity. The mummified children in the burlap sack is the ultimate proof of this. To him, these were just high-value items that he was stealing, that he was looting, not dead kids. Interestingly, there's a snippet of Gerlach's history that hints at a pattern of taking things that don't belong to him. He was charged with retail theft in East Earle, Pennsylvania on November 10th, 2025, right around the time that the cemetery burglaries were ramping up. Of course, shoplifting is not grave robbing, right? It's a huge step to go from shoplifting to grave robbing. You don't hear a lot of people being like, yeah, you know, they started with shoplifting, stealing candy from the store, and next thing you know, they're stealing skulls. But it does establish a disregard for property rights and a willingness to steal. It suggests a man who was spiraling, looking for income or thrills or whatever, wherever he could find it. And the law finally caught up with Jonathan Gerlach. Following the review of the evidence, the Delaware County District Attorney approved a staggering list of 574 charges against him. The prosecutors didn't just group everything together, they charged him for every single bone and every single break-in. The lead charge is burglary F1. In Pennsylvania, a first-degree felony burglary can carry up to 20 years in prison. With 26 counts of felony burglary and hundreds of other felonies, including desecration of corpses, Gerlach is effectively facing life in prison if he is convicted on even a few of them. He was arraigned and sent to Delaware County Jail. The judge set his bail at $1 million cash. This amount shows the severity of the crime and the flight risk. And as of this video, he has not posted bail. And it turns out that Mount Moriah might not have been Gerlach's only hunting ground. The investigation has widened to include other cemeteries in Pennsylvania. Police are actively investigating a link between Gerlach and a theft in Plains Township, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. In November 2025, the same time frame as the Mount Moriah spree, bodies were stolen from the Good Shepherd Memorial Park, and the MO is similar. It was a mausoleum, the method was forcible entry, and human remains were stolen. Investigators noted that the case in Luzerne County was macabre, and that the motive was unknown at the time. With Gerlach's arrest and the discovery of his bones stockpile, the pieces are starting to fall into place. It's highly probable that some of the 100 sets of remains in the basement came from this location or other cemeteries that haven't been discovered yet. The arrest of Jonathan Gerlach stopped the thefts, but it started a new, heartbreaking chapter for the community: identification. Authorities are now in possession of over 100 sets of human remains. Some are full skeletons, some are just skulls, some are fragments. They are mixed together, moved, and stripped of their identifying markers. District Attorney Tanner Rouse admitted that this process is going to take a long time. We are still trying to piece together who they are and where they are from and how many we are looking at, quite literally. And there are significant hurdles to this, right? Many of the stolen bones are over 200 years old. DNA extraction from ancient bones is difficult. And even if they get a profile, who do they compare it to? Finding a living descendant of someone who died in 1860 to provide a reference sample is an almost impossible task. There is a slight glimmer of hope that the skeleton found with the pacemaker offers a solid lead. Medical devices like pacemakers have serial numbers. Manufacturers track these numbers to the patient. This should allow authorities to positively identify at least one of the victims pretty quickly. The jewelry and other personal items found in Gerlach's home also might help. If families have records or photos of heirlooms buried with their ancestors, matches could be made that way. But it's so easy to get lost in the numbers. 100 bodies. 574 charges. District Attorney Rouse brought it back to the human element. I grieve for those who are upset by this, who are trying to figure out if it is in fact one of their loved ones. Imagine being a family member who has a great-grandparent or a child buried in Mount Moriah. You see the photo of a burlap sack, and you have to wonder, is that them? Is grandma sitting on the shelf in some guy's basement? Violating graves has been something that you just didn't do. It's a taboo that goes back to the beginnings of humanity. We bury our dead to give them peace and to give us peace. And Gerlach shattered that peace. He turned a cemetery into a shopping mall and the dead into product. The case of Jonathan Gerlach is a grim reminder that nothing is truly sacred in this country if there is money to be made. What started off with a few broken seals on a mausoleum door, revealed a crime spree of unbelievable proportions. Gerlach was a modern-day resurrection man, armed with a Toyota RAV4 and an Instagram account. He exploited the quiet decay of Mount Moriah Cemetery, counting on the overgrown brush and the silence of the dead to protect him. But he underestimated the people who were in charge of keeping watch over the cemetery. And he underestimated the forensic power of his empty energy drink can. Now, Gerlach sits in a cell in Delaware County facing a mountain of legal trouble that he will not be able to get himself out of. The red market has lost a supplier. The horror movie house in Ephrata is a crime scene. And the slow, painful process of returning the hundreds of stolen bodies to their rest has begun. If this were a movie that you found one night searching your streaming services and you watched this, you would say, nah, plot was too unbelievable. And it shows you that reality still can be stranger than fiction. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you like, share, and comment on this video for the algorithm. Follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, and TikTok. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, leave a comment and tell me about it. Or send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a link in the description of this video to buy me a coffee, so you can buy me a coffee, or you can become a member of the channel. For the $1.99 tier, the lowest tier, you can get access to exclusive content, including exclusive videos, as well as access to my videos before they go public. I appreciate you considering this. You can also support me by continuing to like and share my videos and watching my videos. And I do appreciate that you watch my videos. And please stay spooky.